ran out on the porch and started screaming in Polish, "Policja, Żydzi uciekają." My mother recognized her as our neighbor Popovich. It turns out that she moved into that house when a Jew left for the ghetto. And she really kept screaming. My mother said to her, "Mrs. Popovich, to jest Slavin," in Polish. "These are the Slavin, your neighbors. What are you doing? Stop screaming." And she kept screaming. And my father says, "Let's run." So we started running. And apparently the wind was blowing the opposite direction. The wind was blowing. We could hear her run, her screams, but the wind took her voice away from the bridge where the policeman was, and he never heard her because there were no shots fired. And if you think the divine intervention, it was right there. And we ran away for about a half a mile. We stopped finally, and we realized that daylight was coming, and we have to hide ourselves. So we saw a farm, we knocked on the door, and a farmer recognized us because we had a store in town, and farmers were our customers, so they recognized us. They let us in, and they gave us some food, but the next day he came, he says, "You must go because the police run around us. If they discover Jews in my barn, they will execute everyone." So we left the barn, and my father says that we have to move in one step so that we shouldn't have nobody should get an idea that there's more than one person. So we moved in one step, and my father had big lapses, they call it, very large shoes to cover the tracks. We went all night, and then just before dawn, we had to stop. So we went to in a barn for another farmer, and later on we knocked at their door. They gave us some food, and we stayed there one night, and we kept going. My mother grew up in a small village near my town, about 30 miles from Dunilovich, which is the town that we live. So she knew a few farmers there, and also she knew a customer by the name of Anushkevich. So my mother, it took us a few days to reach that area, and my mother didn't know which farm belongs to Anushkevich. So she knocked on the door, asked for bread, and then she said, "Who lives in that area?" And when they didn't say the word Anushkevich, she kept asking for him in that area, in the other area. Finally, one farmer says, "That house belongs to Anushkevich." So so the next night we went and we knocked on the door, and the lady of the house, her name is Celina Anushkevich. She was a Catholic woman. She recognized my mother. She started crying and saying, "What a terrible fate the Jews have from the Nazis." She took us in, she cooked a meal for us, and we went to the barn. Now my father, before he went to the ghetto, we had some grain and we had a sewing machine. So he gave it to the Catholic priest for safekeeping. He says, you never know. Keep it. We don't need it. We're going to the ghetto. They're going to kill us anyway. You keep it. So we had some stuff with the Catholic priest. The people that Anushkeviches, we found out they lost their husband because a wolf bit him at night and he got rabies. So she was a widow with two women, with two girls, two daughters, a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. And they were very poor. They were practically starving. So my father said to them, "Look, I have stuff with the father in town, in Dunilovich. You go there." He gave a note to the girl and see what he can do for you. So he gave her a note that we survived. Please give us whatever you can. So the father, she went with a sled and a horse and a sled to town, and she presented it to the father, and the father, as she told us, became white in his face. He just said to his assistant, "Give her whatever she wants and just let her go." So they gave her back a sewing machine, and they piled up the sled with grain, and she brought it all back, and they were very happy. They felt that they can survive the winter with us. So that they decided to dig a hole under the bedroom floor and keep us during the day under the floor, and at night we could go outside. So we stayed with the Anushkevich family the winter of 1942-1943. But towards at the beginning of 1943, they started rumors because she got grain, and the grain had to be changed to flour before it could become bread. There was no mill to make flours, so they had to do it by hand. So Januszkiewicz girls were coming in too often to make flours. So there was a rumor that they must be hiding Jews, and if you hide the Jews, you get executed. So the rumor started, and we couldn't stay there anymore. So in the spring of 1943, we were forced to leave and go back to the woods. And while we were in the woods, we found a leaflet that said that the Nazi army of 330,000 people in Stalingrad capitulated to the Russians. And from now on, we're coming back and we will destroy the Russians. So the situation began to change. Up to that point, everybody thought that the Germans were going to win the war, and they had nothing to worry about the Russians or anybody. So, but then, after that, the partisans started coming in, and the population began they became friendlier. They weren't so anxious to bring in Jews to the Nazis for execution. So we spent the summer in the woods of 1943, and then at the end of 43, we were sitting in the woods, and we were worrying what's going to happen in the winter of 1943-44. While we were sitting there, a man appeared, a Gentile, around 65 years old. He took a pail of water and he extinguished the flame that we were keeping warm, and he says, "You're not sitting here, you're coming with me." And he took us to his house, and he took in like 8 Jews, and he kept us for the summer of 1940, of the winter of 1943-44. Now, when we came out from Anushkevich's in the spring of 1943, I forgot to mention, we met 4 Jews who escaped from Danilovich, a couple and 2 Jews. One of the Jews' name was Moishke Cepelevich. Moishke Cepelevich told us a story that he didn't have a hole to run in. So when the Germans came to Danilovich to kill the Jews, they collected all the Jews in the barn. And he and his family wound up in the barn. And all the Jews wound up in the barn. And an SS man was sitting on a hill with a semi-automatic rifle and executing the Jews one by one as they opened the door from the barn. As Moishke was telling us that his little boy David, 7 years old, couldn't stand it, he started crying, so Moishke couldn't stand it, and he ran out of the barn on his own, and he went towards the center of the area where the Jews were being executed, and he started falling on his own, and while he was falling, he got shot, but the bullet caught his ear, and the blood came all over his face, and he fell, and the assessment thought that he was dead. He lay like this the whole day until the entire barn was liquidated, and at night he shook off the people above him, and he went across the lake, and he got survived. And he's the only survivor of the Jews at that time from Danilovich that told us the story of what happened. Some other Jews survived by running across the lake. And all in all, we have 37 Jews. We had 888 Jews before we started and we got 37, and my family was 4 of 37. We had 3 families, actually 3 families survived altogether. And all I can tell you is our survival was partly miracle, partly because a good woman was anxious to help us, and my father's foresight, and a few good deeds, and a little foresight, and a little luck, and that's the story of our survival. Thank you.
Thank you.
I decided a few years ago that I cannot hold it back anymore because I wanted the younger generation to know what happened to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I speak on behalf of all of us, Dr. Slater, when I thank you for the extraordinarily moving way in which you recalled everything which happened to your family, the combination of foresight and fortune, and your delivery and your story are an incredible inspiration. And you and your family, you continue to speak for yourselves about the value that you were able to bring to the world, and thank goodness that you and your loved ones survived. Thank you for being with us this evening. We're going to